The United States launched her 2025 Gold Cup campaign with a 5-0 win over Trinidad and Tobago earlier today. Guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, I quickly just wanted to recap today's match and kind of the current dark cloud that lies over the U.S. men's national team and the Federation in general, and just some of the immediate red flags that have been pointing out to me as of late. But I do think credit is deserved here, especially in the hands of Mauricio Pochettino, because heading in today's matchup against Trinidad, the United States were off the back of a 4-0 loss against Switzerland, a 2-1 loss against Turkey, and there are massive question marks over the roster that Pochettino fielded, because we saw the likes of Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Timothy Weah, about 80% of who you'd expect to be a part of the USA's top starting 11, not be featured in this roster at all. You know, some through the Club World Cup, some through injury. Obviously, as of late, there's been a little bit of drama between Christian Pulisic and Mauricio Pochettino, where essentially Pulisic wanted to be a part of the team, but not necessarily be playing into it, or playing in this tournament, simply because he didn't want to get injured heading into the 2026 World Cup. And kind of, from what I understand, Pochettino kind of replied with, you know, I'm not a mannequin, almost saying, I don't play for you, you play for me. A stern stance, considering the lack of talent or lack of experience heading into this Gold Cup. But I was really impressed with how Pochettino lined up today, because one of the things that I really liked was this kind of 3 number 10 system. So he lined up in a 4-2-3-1. But the parts that impressed me the most were the 3 number 10s, the left being Diego Luna, down the middle being Malik Tillman, and towards the right being Jack McGlynn. And what I really liked about those guys was they found themselves almost putting their back to goal, opening themselves up for these passes and these kind of quick interchanges of play that ultimately it dragged in the Trinidad defense well onto them. So it made it easy to kind of play through what I am thinking was supposed to be a lower block for Trinidad, or at least a more defensive setup for Trinidad. And so I got to give Pochettino immense credit for that, because 9 out of the 11 players that Pochettino fielded currently play in the MLS right now. The only 2 that don't are Malik Tillman and Chris Richards, 2 players who you could probably say are almost guaranteed to be featured in the 2026 World Cup squad. So I do think there was credit deserved today. But now I kind of want to talk about some of my most memorable moments as a United States soccer fan. I've tried to list these in chronological order, so let's kind of get into them. So it starts with the 2014 World Cup. United States ultimately lost 2-1 to Belgium, but there was such a sense of passion and of pride kind of with that team. And this is a team, by the way, it fielded the likes of, and hear me out with some of the names I'm about to say here, Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, Clint Dempsey was still a good player, Tim Howard still a good player, Alejandro Bedoya, Fabian Johnson, Jonathan Brooks. I mean, some of these names, Graham Zusi, for Pete's sakes, David Beckerman. I mean, some of these names I'm saying here, I've not thought about in years. And it almost felt like, with all due respect, almost an MLS All-Star 11, barring a couple of the names. And then we move on to the 2015 United States loss in the Gold Cup semifinals to Jamaica 2-1. That was a game that it was really interesting, because despite it being a Gold Cup semifinal, it stung me. It hurt a lot. I really wanted to see the U.S. advance from that. And you take it a year later, the 2016 World Cup, or 2016, Copa America. United States were invited. I think they even hosted it. The U.S. eventually got dumped out by Argentina 4-0. And it was still just a memorable time, not necessarily because I saw United States play against Messi, but just because I saw United States compete in this prestigious competition, and I could tell the United States were heading in the right direction. Remember that, heading in a positive place. And then we kind of go to what people think is possibly the worst day in modern United States soccer history. That being when the United States got dumped out by Trinidad to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And like I said, it was a desolate time for United States. And it was just, there was one possible future thing to look forward to, and that was all put on the shoulders of a young Christian Pulisic. But there was something still there to move on towards. And I think of the 2021 Gold Cup. The United States had just beaten Mexico in the Nations League, one of my favorite games ever, and then they followed it up with their essential B team going on and beating Mexico in the Gold Cup. And those kind of results, And I know ultimately they were both for a championship and they were both against Mexico, but it almost didn't matter. One could have been against Jamaica, the other one could have been against Canada. It didn't matter that it was against Mexico. It was the fact that there was always something more positive to look forward to. The 2022 World Cup. Ultimately, we lost to Netherlands, but heading into that World Cup and building up to that round of 16 matchup against Netherlands, there was such a unity almost within the team that was felt by everyone. And now I kind of want to pivot it over to some of the more recent concerning things as I've seen happen with the United States. The first being this: why does absolutely no one care about this Gold Cup? I'll be honest with you all, if it wasn't for the sake of making content or the sake of having some football to watch in between the end of one Premier League season to the start of the next, I wouldn't watch this Gold Cup. I think there's been really poor promotional stuff about it. I didn't even find out about it until midway through the Nations League final between Portugal and Spain, where they were saying something along the lines of, the summer of USA Soccer 2025 Gold Cup. That was my first time hearing that, and that was 2 weeks ago, probably, something around that. And I think that's a concerning thing. And I think you look a little bit further back. Think back to last year. United States were, once again, invited to the Copa America. They lost in the group stage, got kicked out in the group stage after a 1-0 loss to Uruguay. I watched probably about 10 minutes of that whole entire tournament for the United States. And it was ultimately the last 10 minutes. And the reason I watched it was because I knew if United States loses or if United States don't win, they're ultimately kicked out. It took until it to be the very last, moment of the United States being in the tournament for me to watch it. How are you combining? You go from this super high place after the 2021 Gold Cup and 2021 Nations League, and after you're feeling proud after that 2022 World Cup, to now here where after the Copa America, things completely fall to shreds. Going into this tournament, you're not hearing about it until just a couple of days prior to it. What's this massive drop-off about? And I'd like to say, I don't necessarily think it has to do with the quality of players that the United States fielded. That 2014 team, some of the names that I mentioned here, they're, with all due respect, they're not all-star names compared to this 2021 2 3 4 team that we've seen. I mean, Timothy Weah, Christian Pulisic, Wes McKennie all play for top teams in AC Milan and Juventus. Tyler Adams has done great stuff when he's fit at Bournemouth. Malik Tillman just won his second straight Eredivisie title with PSV Eindhoven, along with Serginho Dest and Ricardo Pepi. There's USA players are doing massive things for these big clubs, playing in the Champions League. I mean, I think it's Pulisic is the first American to play in the Champions League final and to win a Champions League or something like that. So this is a much higher ceiling or a much higher, even average to what we saw in 2014. And even look past that, the 2015 team. It's relatively similar to what we saw in 2014. It's so much worse than what we're seeing now. So I don't really think my passion for the team deals with the quality of players, because I value that 2015 team a lot more than I value this current team. Or even the team that got eliminated from World Cup contention in 2018. I still almost value that team more than I value this current stance of where the United States stands. I also think another thing people might say is because, United States are expected to win the Gold Cup now. They're expected to win every single Nations League. Guys, United States have been in 3 of the last 6 Gold Cups. The Gold Cups only occur once every 2 years. So, even before I even fully started becoming a fan of United States soccer, United States have made 3 of the last 6 finals with much worse teams. United States have won 4 of the first 5, I believe, Nations Leagues. Long before I've been a fan, long before we saw Christian Pulisic or whoever was there, United States have been a contender because they've just been deemed to be a big enough nation to be contending for these Gold Cups, now the Nations League. So I don't think it is now this sudden expectation that dulls down the effect of winning a Gold Cup or winning a Nations League, which scares me almost more. I almost wish it was this fact that now we're expected to win. That's what's scaring me. Or excuse me, that's what's making me care less about these tournaments. But the bottom line here is, since that 2022 World Cup, the momentum that was being carried by the United States, it's dropped off the map. We saw it with the little promotion for the Gold Cup. We saw it with the my lack of caring, at least in the 2024 Copa America. I think that's something worth a lot of concern. And this would almost be okay if this was a number of years ago when United States soccer were, flailing in terms of the talent they were producing. But now we have, like I mentioned, super talented players. Next year, United States are hosting the World Cup, for Pete's sakes. They need to perform. For the sake of the nation, for the sake of United States soccer as a whole, United States need to compete. If we go and we crash out of the group stage, or we don't make it far at all in the World Cup, it's going to put a massive scar on this kind of generation of United States talent, in which we've deemed as almost to be, the next golden generation. So if United States don't perform, it's going to be something really bad, and I don't think they're going to perform. There's just a lack of tenacity, a lack of viable attention. It just feels like right now the public don't care. Maybe the players do, but I'm not necessarily getting that they are. I'm certainly not getting that the public don't care. I personally don't really care. My eyes are on the next World Cup, and even when I was younger, even when it was in games that you might think mattered less, it felt like there was so much more passion towards those than there are now. And that's ultimately my biggest red flag with U.S. soccer right now. But anyway, guys, let me know what you all think, and comment down below some possible solutions of what the United States can do to kind of amp up hopes heading into this next World Cup, because I don't think it's looking great, guys. But anyway, I'll talk to you all later. Thank you all for the continued support, and God bless.